Hi everyone, this is Britt Simon. So I think we're probably only on YouTube right now, so apologies if you're normally a Facebook person. Let me just edit this for a second. If I can. Look over the data. Save changes. And let's go live. Okay, I should be able to go live on Facebook as well now. Yeah. Okay. Good. So I plan to jump online here because Zarthesius has published an important extract of data on his site, and I want to show you that. He's just extracted the data as he does every Friday, and we've got the numbers where we're sitting right now, and kind of where we're sitting right now is an important point to talk about. We're on the 2nd of August, right? It's Friday night here in America. KCC have finished, they've gone home. They won't work over the weekend. And there have been no 2NLs today at all. And so although there have been a few 2NLs over the last few days, there's not been any major number of 2NLs. I'm surprised, frankly, that we didn't see a batch of 2NLs today or yesterday. I thought we would. I'm surprised Casablanca didn't get a batch of 2NLs. And it's possible, but I don't want to sort of, I don't want to create false doubt here, but it is possible that we get some new 2NLs on Monday or Tuesday of next week, let's say. But I think that's less likely now. As we're sitting here on a Friday night, I think it's less likely. I think we have come to the end of normal scheduling of 2NLs for DV2024. Now, in every year, Zarthesius and I notice a few 2NLs come out for the remainder of August and sometimes even in early September. But when I say a few, I do mean very few, like one or two here. Their cases sometimes follow to join cases, sort of cases like that are really sort of unusual cases. One here, two at that, embassy. There's no sort of telling where those could pop up. But I don't think what we will see, I don't think we'll see like 100 2NLs going out to an embassy now. I don't think we're going to see second batches of 2NLs for any embassies. I think what we've got now is what we've got. I think that's it. And so, I could be pleasantly surprised, and I would be thrilled if they would surprise us with a few more on Monday or Tuesday. But honestly, I think that we need to face the reality that this is looking like a sort of a wrapped up deal here. Now, for those of you asking questions, by the way, probably don't ask questions for the time being. I'm not going to answer those for the time being. I might answer a few questions later, but really the questions are not the point of what I'm trying to get across on this video. Okay. So where do we stand? Okay, so the first thing is there's nearly 38,000 visas issued at this point, plus nearly another 500 here. So basically 38,500 visas have been issued. Nearly 5,000 people are in 221G. We see every year there's a sort of an acceleration or a push to try and clear up these 221G cases before the end of the year. It's nothing official. It doesn't happen on a particular date. It's just that during August and September, we will see that number reduce. That's a combination of the embassies trying to clear up some cases that they have, that they control, where they can say, yeah, I'm going to clear that case. And also they tend not to put quite as many cases into 221G in the final weeks because there's no time. So they really say, look, if we're going to put a case into 221G in mid-September, we may as well refuse the case. There's no point in going into 221G. So let's imagine we've got 38,500 issued, and let's say we get at least 3,000 of these 5,000 from there. That would give us 41,500 visas from people that have already been interviewed, right? And then we've got nearly 18,000, in fact, just over 18,000 once you handle those in-transit cases. So almost 18,000 cases are marked at ready status. Now, ready means, in theory, that the case has been scheduled and the interview is about to take place, right, in August and in September. However, ready is also seen on cases that were scheduled back in March, April, and May. And those are no-shows, right? And so I know that there's probably about 5,000 no-shows in that 18,000 number. There's probably between, let's say, 12,000 and 13,000 real cases that will be interviewed during August and September, something along those lines. So with the 41,500 that we have and the 12 or 13,000 people being interviewed, we will see more than 50,000 being issued just from what they've done so far. So for those of you that can't believe it's over, that can't believe that we're at the end here, it's possible that the government say, yeah, 51, 52,000, that's fine. They don't have to go to the 55,000, right? So we'll probably see 52,000 issued. But and then when you add adjustment of status cases on top of that, that would be about 1,000. So if they issue 52,000 through embassies, 1,000 through adjustment of status, that's 53,000. That's really, pretty normal for them up until the last 2 years. It's only been in the last 2 years, DV22 and 23, where we saw them trying to hit the actual limit, the 55,000 limit. And in DV2023, well, in fact, in both years, it kind of went wrong on them. They went too far. They issued too many visas. And I'm sure that a natural reaction, if you've just overfilled a pot and you've made a mess, you're pouring water into a jug or something and you've made a mess, what do? You're more careful next time, right? You're more careful in the way you pour the water and you won't make a mess. You won't make that same mistake twice. They did make that same mistake twice. Maybe I should say you won't make it 3 times, right? So I think they've probably exercised a little caution here, and that's what's going on. So these numbers are pretty solid. The other thing I wanted to talk about was just how ludicrous, how ridiculous that visa bulletin was. I had a look at the data, looking at cases above a certain number in each of the 3 big regions, right? And Africa went current to 122,000, whatever the number is, right? And there was a case of 122,201, I think it was, that did get scheduled. But there's only 64 cases above the number 90,000 in the world for Africa that have been scheduled, right? Only 64 cases. So they made 30,000 cases, current above the number 90,000. So 30,000 case numbers were current, and only 64 of them were scheduled for Africa, right? For Asia, above the number 21,000, they have scheduled 60 people above that number, above 20,000, 21,000. Above 21,000 to 27,500, only 60 cases. And for EU, if you take the number from 33,000, above 33,000 to 50,000, there's only 63 cases scheduled. Okay, so thousands of cases between those 3 regions. Let's say 9, 10, about 11,000 cases didn't get scheduled. So and 180 cases did. So if you take those numbers, 90,000 for Africa, 21,000 for Asia, 33,000 for EU, they would have been fine. They would have been fine to cut those numbers off at that point. It was completely false to give the impression that they could issue 2NLs up to 50,000 for EU, for example, or that they could issue 2NLs for Africa, current. It was completely false. Now there have been a few cases, 180 cases or so, that have benefited from that, and there will be a few more cases in America, adjustment of status cases, that have benefited from that. But really, to give so many people the impression that they were going to have a chance, falsely, to me, it seems like a strange thing to do. The other thing is that by making Africa and Asia current to that level, to the level that they went to, it kind of made things unfair for EU, because there are embassies that in their final batches, like I showed about Frankfurt the other day, Africa took 4 cases, I think it was, Asia took 17 cases, and EU in Germany only got 4 cases, right? And Germany wouldn't have got any cases at all if there had been a few more Asian cases or African cases, right? Because of the way that they schedule the cases, because of this alphabetical order thing, it has made a sort of pretty unfair situation, okay? So that's kind of where we're standing. There will be, I hope, still a few more 2NLs. I hope to see, for example, a correction at Yerevan. There was a very unjust situation. I posted a video about it about a week ago. A very unjust situation was created there. I'm hoping Yerevan will correct that. I would love to see Casablanca do something. I'd love to see Kathmandu do something, because Kathmandu's had a really weird year. It's very weird that they don't schedule all of their cases. Very unusual. I would like to see some of these sort of really weird things corrected, but there's been a lot of conversation about second batches, and I've not fed any of that conversation about second batches. And in fact, what I've said consistently is there's no good reason to believe that there will be second batches. Some people have emotionally convinced themselves that, oh yeah, there'll be a second batch because they're going to send some cases for this region or for that region, because none of that region got into the first batch. That's not how it works. It's never worked like that. When KCC schedule, they don't care whether it's an Asian case or an EU case or an Africa case and so on. They're just cases. They're just filling available spots with the next cases in the list. They're not separating their work out by region. And so the chance of getting second batches for any embassy is always low. But I think many people have been assuming there would be a wave of second batches, and we clearly can see now that isn't going to be the case. So there you go. So am I saying it's 100% over? No, I'm not quite saying that. But it is mostly over, I think. And for, unless we get really nice surprise very early next week, I think we're done. The visa bulletin will be published next week, probably. Might be the week after, but it's more likely to be towards the end of next week. And once that's published, of course, most of the scheduling effort will be going into DV2025. DV2025 cases will start to get their 2NLs immediately after that visa bulletin when it's published. And KCC might be getting the numbers for that as early as Monday or Tuesday of next week. And so they'll start to work on scheduling. They won't send out 2NLs yet, but they will be working on scheduling as early as next week for DV 2025 cases. So they're done with DV 2024, apart from a few exceptional cases, and the very, very small hope that I personally have that a couple of these sort of big missing, odd scenarios will be rectified in the next few days, but we'll have to see. Okay, so that's where we're standing. So let's just go through a couple of questions here. Firstly, an OC one, OC24. We reviewed after watching a video about alphabetical order. A heap of AS processed in Sydney. It wasn't really a heap, but it was about 17, I think. Most of them were Asia, funnily enough. Also, it didn't look like OC had sent 2NLs this month. Yeah, OC had sent 2NLs. So there were 108 2NLs sent for September, and maybe a couple more than that. 108 108 were OC, and Sydney took a few of Asian, and I think maybe one African as well, something like that. But this is what happened in Sydney in this last batch is actually very similar to what happened in Frankfurt. I'll show you what I mean. Let me just get down here. We'll have a look at Sydney. I think it should be updated now. I've been seeing this data for a few days, but it'll now be on this data. You'll see the update. Yeah, 725 and 724. So a total of 17 cases were sent to Sydney, it's the Sydney embassy, but 13 of them, as I mentioned, were for Asia region, one was for Africa region, and 3 were for, is it 3? I thought it was 4, but 3 for OC region. In Sydney, there are more Asians than locals. The only way that happens is an alphabetical sorting order, which is what I explained on the Frankfurt and Yerevan video that I published a week ago. So if you want to know why that happened, have a look at that other video. But that's basically what happened. What it means is, unfortunately, it's over, Jacqueline. They can't get to 24XX. The other really weird thing that happened was Suva went nuts. Suva, so we were very close. We've been very close to the limit, the cap for the global quota. Sorry, the global quota and the regional quota, but the regional quota for Oceania, we've been very close to that for actually quite some time. But Suva didn't seem to care. They scheduled 98 cases on 725. They just went nuts. They said, okay, we're going to go. And they went up to case number 2599. So that was really interesting that they had a totally different take on it from Sydney. Sydney and Auckland, they had a few cases, but very few. And so the rest of them went to Suva. And now regionally, Oceania is going to quite well exceed its quota. It's going to take extra quota. How does that happen? Well, it's going to take them from Africa, basically. Africa is going to not use all of its quota because its quota is going to be 24,000. It won't use all of that. And so the other regions have dipped into that quota. And Oceania has just gone nuts thanks to Suva doing such a good job. You can look at it that way. Okay, so a couple more questions. Case number EU 34,000, other numbers from you with 2NL, any chance? Yeah, all of these questions that are saying any chance for this number, any chance for that number, the answer on all of those is going to be no, there's really not very much chance at all now. If you haven't already had your 2NL, it's probably not going to come. The chances of you getting your 2NL now has just fell off a cliff. It just went, massively down because we're on Friday night, and they don't normally send 2NLs en masse at this time of the month, into the next month, as it were. We've seen a few on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, sometimes even the 4th, but not very many. And by the time we get to Monday, it will be the 5th. So that's pretty late. Okay, so do AOS people stand a chance, or is it over as well? Okay, so that brings me to another point. There are not enough people scheduled to exhaust the visas. Okay, so even if every single person, which won't happen, but even if every single person on 221G were miraculously approved, they still wouldn't hit the cap. Okay, and so people on AOS don't need to worry. There will be visas until the 30th of September. And everyone that's scheduled for an interview in September, you don't need to worry either. There's going to be visas for you. So there is not going to be a repeat of what happened in DV2023, where we had a cancellation of the program. The program was stopped on September 6th. That won't happen, I can say definitively. That won't happen in DV2024. Because there are just not enough people scheduled. Now, if If they turned around on Monday and they made a fool out of me and they scheduled 2,000 more cases, then we'd be having a different conversation. But I don't think there's any chance that's going to happen, and so there's no risk for any of the cases. So no, don't worry about AOS. Okay. What's going on with Mumbai Embassy? Same sort of question. It is what it is. I don't quite know why they've chosen to be conservative, but there are some embassies who have done very well. And quite confusingly, a lot of the embassies that we expected to have a good month didn't even have a good month. Algeria, I think, took 30 cases, for example. Casablanca haven't taken any. Some really bizarre things have gone on. 125, I think it was, in Kathmandu. Very unusual. So yeah, that's where we're at. From Algeria, there's no interview for Algeria. Moroccan. Yep. So no, I'm here to say that mostly the chances for DV2024 are gone. Okay. Until when they keep taking the visas for DV from NDAA? Good question. I think this is going to be an ongoing thing until that need is gone. I didn't see an end date in the legislation, and so I know that it's up to 3,500 visas will be taken from DV 2025. I don't think they'll take 3,500, but I'm saying up to. And then that number reduces to being up to 3,000 in DV26. The actual number taken is a sort of a follow-on from the previous year. So the number of that class of visa that they issue in this year, which is GS and GV, I think it is, the number of visas that they issue in that class in 24 will be the number that they reduce the DV lottery available visas by in the next year. Now, I already know that there were several hundred of those issued between January and May of this year. So there's definitely going to be some reduction, but will it be 3,500? I don't think it'll be all of that. And I don't know for how many years that will continue, but that isn't really a problem as long as they don't over-select, right? The question is whether they over-select or not, but we'll have to, we'll know a little bit more about that when we see the data in the visa bulletin that's published in a few days' time. Okay. Okay. Should my derivative accompany to interview if I'm not emigrating with them in 24? No. No need to take a derivative with you if that derivative is not going. DRS will have an opportunity. No, same answer as to other people. My number is 99. I'm on the bulletin, so I have the right to get an appointment. No, you don't have a right. There's a lot of people who get confused with this. They see this opportunity as some sort of right. It isn't a right, it's a privilege. It makes very clear in the initial letter that selection does not guarantee an appointment or a visa. Okay, you don't have a guaranteed appointment, you don't have a guaranteed visa, you don't have a right to a visa or an appointment. Even though they made you current, that doesn't mean you've got a right. It just doesn't. You can argue that if you want. You can choose to not believe me if you want, but that's the reality, and that's how it will work. So, you can choose to ignore my words if you want. That's up to you. I can't do anything about that. Okay. After confirming my interview, I mistakenly pressed the Add Applicant button. It created another NRV number. Does that mean the interview has been cancelled? No, it doesn't mean that. If you're scared, contact the embassy. It's quite simple. Just email them. But it's not a problem. Here's someone asking about 221G. That's a worthwhile question. Why is it taking so long? I don't know why they take a long time on some cases, but in your particular case, you graduated from Kenya and you're in Guangzhou, right? And so that local embassy has to probably contact the Kenyan embassy in order to confirm your documents, your qualifications, and all of that sort of thing. So, even though you're not Middle East or Iranian, yeah, I understand, but there is still a complication with your case, even if it would appear to be relatively simple. There's a bit of a complication there. Okay, all right, so I didn't get a 2NL, you're in Jordan, yep. A lot of people didn't get a 2NL. As I say, only 180 people above those numbers I mentioned earlier got 2NLs. Out of what is well over 11,000 people that were made current, 180 got 2NLs. I think when some people heard the regions going, like Africa going current and that sort of thing, they assumed, as our friend just a moment ago, they assumed that they have a right there. Who is it, Samia? That they have a right because they've gone current. There's no such law, there's no such rule. But I do think it's frustrating that the government did that and gave a false impression to people. There was really no need to do that. So, I'm not quite sure why they did that. And they clearly limited the number of interviews they've given out, not only by the capacity, but also there's been some sort of limit. They didn't want to give out more interviews. So, why the visa office went so crazy with the visa bulletin number and then KCC went conservative, it's beyond me. But there you go. Okay. Let me just have a quick scan, see if there's any interesting questions. It's the middle of the night for most of my viewers, so I'm not at all surprised that we're not having many questions. So that's fine. Is it advisable? Always cracks me up when people ask this sort of question. Is it advisable to use the same picture that won the lottery for the previous year in the next year of registration? No, that would be an extremely stupid thing to do. Because it says in the instructions to not do that. So follow the instructions. Actually take notice and read the instructions. But it says to not reuse a photo from a previous year's entry. So don't. It's as simple as that. It really is a matter of reading the instructions and believing that the instructions are true and just operating that way, right? Don't try and play a game because that was a lucky photo or something. Don't do that. That would be silly. Right. Oh, I want to address this comment. Does DV2024 officially ended? The official end of DV2024 will be on September 30th, not before. Okay, so I'm not here to tell you that it's officially ended. There's no official ending until September 30th. It's just that we have to be sensible and realistic about what is happening at the moment and whether or not it's going to become whether we'll get any more 2NLs. And I'm just thinking we won't, right? Okay, we are here in USA on B1, B2 visa, but the main applicant, my husband, denied a visa renewal. Can we so visa adjustment here without him? No, you can't. The main applicant, the principal winner in the DV case, has to adjust status, and the family go along with that person. So if that's your husband and he's not there, then no, you can't adjust status. That's a dreadful shame. I'm sorry you're in that position. That's unfortunate. Okay. Oh, here we go. AOS here, just sent my package today. Good, you've got a chance. 2NL received 2 weeks ago. Good. Okay, so EU 45K. So you're going to be one of the few people that will probably benefit from the stupid high visa bulletin. So to you, it's not a stupid high visa bulletin. You're very pleased about it. So fingers crossed for you. You have enough time. I've seen cases submit AOS packages as late as early September and still be processed in time. So it's possible. Okay, a couple more questions, then I'll call it a night. I'm going to take my daughter out for dinner. Let's see. Oh, okay. Someone here has saved their case. Mashfig was going to be stuck in in Warsaw, transferred to Tbilisi, and got an interview. So yeah, glad to read that. I'm sure some people did transfer their cases. I had an interesting dialogue with a group of people yesterday. They had been accepted by Kuala Lumpur. They were previously in Ankara, and a lot of people had transferred their cases, or rather moved their cases, via KCC using the new FAM policy as their justification, saying, hey, I'm physically present in Kuala Lumpur, I'd like to have my interview here. And Kuala Lumpur embassy accepted that and helped get KCC to reassign their cases. Now that's really interesting because those cases would have been previously in AV status in the queue for Ankara, right? And so it's interesting that KCC are starting to let people move out of the AV queue if the embassy gets involved, right? Now, it's always been that way, the embassy getting involved, but it's been quite a rare thing for the embassy to get involved on behalf of the selectees. However, those cases were not scheduled. And I had one particular young man, I guess, going back and forth with me. He was unable to understand why Kuala Lumpur would have accepted the move, the reassignment of the case to their embassy, without scheduling the appointment, right? And I've said, look, at no point did they promise to schedule your appointment. They said, yes, you can move the case to that embassy, but nobody had promised those people that the cases would be scheduled. And there is a limit to how many cases they can take. And so just because an embassy accepts your case does not mean they're going to schedule your case. So unfortunately, some people have learned a hard lesson about that, I'm afraid, but that's the reality of it. Okay. So there are no more interviews this month, probably not, very few. I think we're at the end. That's basically what I came online to say. All right, everybody, I think we've probably exhausted all the good questions here. Thank you for joining me. Sorry this was a quick session, but I think I've got across the information I wanted to pass over to you. So I hope that was informative. Even if it's not the news you wanted to hear, frankly, at some point, to actually hear the news is kind of a pressure relief. Some of you will go through a grief process now. There are 5 stages of grief, including denial and anger, depression, and eventually acceptance. But I understand some of you will get angry. Some of you will probably lash out at me or anybody else. Please try and be kind to everyone. I don't really care if you want to lash out at me. It doesn't bother me at all. But the reality is that people delivering information to you are just the bearers of that information, not necessarily the people that cause the problem. And so, it is what it is. So try and be a little bit adult about that. Some of you are going to be in denial. You're going to say that everything I'm saying is wrong, and you know better, and God will sort this out, or your friend from the post office works with someone who works at the embassy and they know better. There's always those sort of stories. There's always those sort of people that believe in fairies and fantasies. And those sort of people they'll just take longer to come to terms with what is happening. So it's an unfortunate thing. It's a tough thing. So I feel bad for those of you that didn't make it this year. All I can say is try again. If you have faith, then perhaps your God believes you should stay where you are for the time being. Maybe there's a purpose there. I don't know. It's not what I don't subscribe to those thoughts. But if that's the way you think about it, perhaps that's what's going on in your life. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. Have a great evening. Bye-bye now.